Hello and welcome to the Florida Aviation Network. We're broadcasting live and in the clear today from the 45th Annual Sun and Fun International Fly-In and Expo at Lakeland Linder International Airport in Lakeland, Florida. My name is Ron Timmermans. I'm one of the many hosts here with the Florida Aviation Network, bringing you this broadcast and others throughout the day and throughout the week at Sun and Fun. You know, Florida Aviation Network consists of a host of volunteer people that volunteer their time to bring you these broadcasts, and I would be remiss if I didn't give some credit to the many people that are working here this week. You see myself and Mr. Ben Coleman as the hosts interviewing guests, but there's a lot of people behind the scenes, behind the cameras that I just wanted to draw your attention to. For instance, today we got 3 cameras in this studio being operated by Wade, Tyler, and Keith. We have a floor manager named Bill who keeps us all in line here. We have 2 people working grips that are Taylor and Sierra. We have 2 PAs that are ushering their guests in and getting them situated, Carol and Melody. We've got 2 folks in the satellite truck, OB2 and Steve. We got a post-production people, we got a producer that keeps us all glued together and headed in the right direction, and we've got drivers and many other support people. As I mentioned, there's 2 hosts that are working this week, Mr. Coleman and myself, and working with the guests, and then we're supported by some 30 volunteers with the Florida Aviation Network. So thanks to all of you that help make this production possible. This hour we're going to be speaking with 2 very interesting people in the air show business as well, Gary Rower and Joshua Rower, and they're here with us today. Gary, good to have you with us. Josh, thanks for joining us today. And so you fly as steerman in an air show that are going to be performing today. Is that correct, Gary?
I do. I'll be flying about 3:40 this afternoon, a little solo aerobatic routine in the steerman.
Very good. And how long does this routine last?
About 11 minutes.
11 minutes, okay. An action-packed performance and then the steerman. Is this the one with the big engine?
This is the big engine, and this is the salute to manned spaceflight.
Oh.
This is the 50th anniversary of the first lunar landing, and actually we've been choreographed to support the Apollo program for about 15 years.
Oh wow, how interesting, how interesting. So what is the connection with the choreographing to the Apollo program? How do you do this? Through music and routines?
Well, music and routines, and we sort of take a 77-year-old biplane and do a Saturn V launch as much as we can.
Oh, the straight up thing.
Well, not exactly straight
Almost.
up, but
it looks like it.
It'll be a Saturn V launch with a countdown from the NASA archives. It's just a really, really fun show.
Wow. Just last week, Gary, I was able to see the new movie Apollo 11, and what a thrill that was. I remember the day and the place where I was when we experienced the lunar landing back in 1969. It was a special moment. It's one of those things that if you were there and alive at the time, you will never forget that place. So this will be a recreation of that moment, the Saturn V launch.
A little bit.
And the like. So anyway, that's good. That's good. And Josh, thanks for joining us. You're part of the next generation of aviation, I understand. So tell us about yourself.
So I started flying, grew up in an aviation family. When we were growing up, we had a 1949 Bonanza. And I think I was about 4, maybe 5 years old, sitting on a booster seat and a stack of cushions just to see over the glare shield. Sitting, flying with my dad and everything, and living on an air park. So had a little playground in the backyard, and stand on top, pretend to be an air traffic controller, watching all the airplanes. You know, a lot like here at Sun and Fun, watching all the airplanes come in and pretending to control them and everything. So
wow, that's good.
Quite an introduction into aviation.
You were meant for aviation, I imagine.
Yep.
So now you're talking my language, Josh. Bonanza. So in 1949, that would have been an A35, I suspect. Mm-hmm. Good. So I'm a Bonanza owner as well, and enjoy flying Bonanza airplanes and giving instruction in Bonanza and Baron. So yeah, we're on the same league here now, or same plane indeed. Well, that's good. That's good. So Josh, are you an air show performer now as well?
So I'm starting. I've been a waiver holder since probably 2011, and starting to get back into it. Had to do a little bit of growing up, go out and get a full-time job with the Air Force as well as with the airlines. And then starting to get, now things are settled, I can get back into the air shows and into competition aerobatics and going forward from there.
Very good. So are you still in the Air Force, or were you in?
I am. So I was full-time in the Air Force Reserve. I graduated college and then went into, was in ROTC, and then was able to get picked up. I was able to get a navigator position on the C-130.
On the C-130?
So I spent some time as a navigator and then in the Air Force Reserve, and then went along to get picked up and go through pilot training, become a pilot on the C-130. So I spent the last 7 years doing that, and got a few more years until I can get that retirement.
Very good. Well, that's great. Well, thank you for your service to our nation and the Air Force. And the Air Force Reserve. That's great. And now with the airlines, did I hear you say?
I am. I'm with one of the regional carriers, a subsidiary of Delta.
Okay, good. And flying in a flying position with them?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So I'm a first officer on the CRJ 200, flying out of New York City.
Out of New York. Great, great. Well, Gary, how about you? A career in the airlines as well, or in other ones?
Yeah, I was a former F-16 pilot a million years ago.
A million years
when the
ago.
F-16s were new when we picked them up at the factory.
Yeah.
But I've been with a major airline for over 30 years, and now I'm the guys that they're looking at going, so when are you leaving?
Someone looking to advance in the seniority rating as soon as you move out of the way. Well, that's good. That's good. And so, how many years in the Air Force for you, Gary?
I only did 7 years on active duty.
Only 7? That's pretty significant. Yeah. That's good. F-16. So you went to the factory in Fort Worth, Texas, to pick up your new F-16.
When it was still General Dynamics.
When it was General Dynamics, yep. I remember.
Yeah.
Actually, during the production of the F-16 at the General Dynamics plant, now Lockheed Martin, I was across the way at Carswell Air Force Base building facilities for the Air Force there. So I was there and frequently would go over and get a tour through the General Dynamics production building, the one that's like a mile long.
Yep.
The airplane starts at parts and pieces, raw material at one end, and comes out an F-16 and goes from there into the paint shop. And it's just an incredible transformation of raw materials into a fighting Falcon. It really is. It
really was. And
now they're doing J-35s there.
Yep. It was amazing to be 24 years old. They hand you a pen and you sign for a brand new airplane that smells like a new car.
Oh my goodness.
It was an incredible experience.
I'll bet it was. A thrill of taking off and that first time in runway 17, I think.
Yep.
Very good, very good. So we both have memories of the place. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. And so are you enjoying the C-130, Josh?
I am. It's a great airplane, and I enjoy the Air Force. The people that I'm with is probably the best part. So sometimes when we go to those places that aren't so fun, we still have each other, and it's a great community. Just like the aviation community in general, it's great to be around the people that are in it.
Yeah. You mentioned a moment ago something about a waiver. Tell us about that. It has to do with air show and performances, I would imagine.
So within aviation, in the aerobatic community, to do the air shows and everything, there's waivered airspace at all the air shows, all the competition aerobatics and everything, and to get down to the surface doing aerobatics as a demonstration pilot, you have to go through a waiver process. And it's similar to any other check ride with an oral at the beginning and everything like that, where you talk about all the things that you're going to be doing and some of the challenges of that dynamic environment. But you go out and you do a check ride of your performance and everything, and someone evaluating you, ACEs, which Gary is one of them. And you go through and you have to do a certain number of performances and everything. You start out at 800 feet as your lowest altitude, and you slowly work your way down to the surface as you become more proficient and experienced.
So in this case, success is working your way down rather than working your way up, as most of us would call it. Well, that's great. That's great. Well, Gary, I know you've been here and submitted to an interview in previous years. So what have you been working on since you were here last year? Is there something new and different?
Well, the show is such a celebration of manned spaceflight that we haven't touched that. But last year, 2018, the Tempest Stearman and I did over 12,000 miles. We crisscrossed North America 3 times, and so we had a ball. We started in Arizona, came here for Sun and Fun last spring, ended up in British Columbia, and then finished up back in the southeast, and with stops all across the country. It was a great show season, and we had a lot of fun.
Well, very good, very good. And then I understand that you've been dabbling in writing as well. So tell us about that, Gary.
Well, I've done some writing for various magazines over the years, but with Josh coming up and also the things we talked about last year, as far as the shortage of pilots, the shortage of mechanics, just the job opportunities in the airlines, I started doing some writing about the next gen, not just Josh, but the next generation of airshow performer. We need new announcers. We need all kinds of people within the airshow community, and so I've been writing about that, and also writing a how-to article about how do you get started in this, because we meet people all the time at air shows that, I'd like to do that. How do I get started? And so the simplest thing to do was basically write them a checklist, like everything else we do in aviation.
Indeed. Your checklist, that is how you got into performance in aircraft, and that's great. That's great. Well, I'm glad. I'm sure you're helping people. So a lot of folks, as Gary mentioned, are looking to get into one aspect or another of aviation. Many of them want to be pilots. Some of them want to be support personnel, aviation maintenance technicians. Maybe some of you want to become an airshow pilot, such as Gary and Josh. And so Gary's formed this checklist, how to or how to begin and start the process. Well, that's great. I'm sure that's going to be beneficial to all those who are trying to get into airshow pilot. And we need, there's a shortage there too, right?
There is.
Yeah.
We're not getting any younger.
Exactly, yeah. And so, Gary, I know to do this air show, it's just one airplane in the air, but you're doing some things that would be, certainly there's risk involved with them, perhaps a higher risk than just flying an airplane when you're doing maneuvers and doing them close to the ground. How do you account for safety of operations? Is there certain things that you do or don't do, and a checklist that you go through? Can you tell us about that?
Well, we're not stunt pilots. Everything that we do is planned, practiced, trained, evaluated, critiqued, and so we build that routine with a safety out. So I can go through my entire show routine, the one that'll be on this afternoon, and tell you what I was going to do if I have a failure at any single point. If I lose the motor on an upline at show center, what am I going to do? So we mitigate the risk. Yeah, of course there's risk involved in flying upside down close to the ground. So what do we do to mitigate those risks and take care and plan for ultimately a mistake or a mechanical failure that can happen?
Yeah. Do you do any of your routines with multiple aircraft, or is it only a solo performance with just you and the steerman?
No, I do a dissimilar formation act with Buck Ropeman from Wild Horse Aviation in his pits. So we put a pits and a steerman together in formation. We've done that a few times here at Sun and Fun, and we've been doing that together for about 8 years and have a ball. It's kind of like a little dogfight.
Yeah, wow, that's good. That's good. So that's great. So I'm glad to hear that you address safety as a specific topic, and a very important one, of course, because although it's not a dangerous thing that you do, there is risk, perhaps an elevated level of risk versus other flying, and you mitigate for it and you come back safely and fly again the next air show, the next routine. So Josh, what do you think you'll be flying in an air show soon? Will you be in the steerman or in another aircraft, or don't know yet?
I like a little more high performance. No offense, but I've got a Giles 200, so single seat monoplane, all composite aircraft that I've been doing air shows preparation for. Hopefully we'll start that later this year.
So you are in air shows already, or you're going to be soon?
Going to be soon.
Going to be soon. Okay, great. And will you follow your dad on the circuit and
we'll
various
see.
air shows?
I'm going to try and stick a little closer, so I'm not doing 12,000 miles back and forth across the country.
I can imagine that'd be exhausting. Yeah. I mean, plus, there's a day job, right?
Yeah.
Indeed. Well, how often will you be doing air shows then, Josh? Do you think 3 or 4 a year? Or
hopefully, pick up at least a half dozen, maybe 10 shows this year. Later in the year, that might be overreaching a little with 2 jobs and a family and everything, but it's certainly a goal of mine.
Very good, very good. Well, that's great. So, Gary, you mentioned you're flying this afternoon,
right?
And then let's see, any other flights this week?
I'm flying the night show. We'll dress up the steerman.
What would that look like?
Night. Yeah.
Here we see some video footage of Gary flying the steerman in a night show. Is this at Oshkosh here? Oshkosh, or is it here? Or
I think that might have been here.
Might have been here at Sun and Fun. That's great. That's great. So what is causing all that flame to come out the back end there?
That's the afterburner. I'm an F-16 pilot.
All right. I think you're pulling my leg here, but
Just a smidge.
just a smidge.
Yeah.
So what do you do to make that fire come out of the back of the airplane for the night air show?
Well, that's actually just a light. It's a 250,000 candle power incandescent light
I see.
down in the smoke.
Down in the smoke.
And it looks like the airplane's on fire. Matter of fact, we've had the FAA at a show going, "Oh, call out the fire department."
Really?
Yeah,
I thought you
his
were on
airplane's
fire.
on
Huh? Well, that's good. And then you also had strobe lights, I saw, and what else was flashing on there? Lights under the wings?
We have wing illumination lights on the top and bottom of the wings. We have strobes up on the cowling that are shielded so that I don't get blinded. We have strobes out at the wingtip. We have a light stand on the top wing that lights up the top of the top wing, kind of like a wing walker stand, but it's just for lights. And so we try and dress her up, and then the cowling is lit up as well.
Wow. Do you even have a rotating beacon on there?
Well, no, I have the strobes.
The strobes are more than sufficient. Yeah, I think you're well lit. I don't think anyone's going to need to worry about running into you unlit at night. That's great. That's great. And previous person that was in here, we were talking about air show performance as well, and he said that you use a special oil for the smoke. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And you inject it into the exhaust manifold?
Exactly. It's a paraffin-based mineral oil, so it's non-toxic because, especially open cockpit, we breathe it, but it's a non-toxic smoke that it just vaporizes the oil in the exhaust.
Yeah. Wow, that's great, and makes for a really great air show performance. So do you have smoke on your airplane as well, Josh?
I do. We were able to. The airplane that I have was originally built lightweight, nothing on it, no trim tabs or anything. It's just as simple and as light as it can be. So we actually had to go back in after the fact and add a smoke system into it, so we could actually do some performances.
Yeah. So where do you store the oil, in the cockpit or in a wing tank or what?
So I have no wing tanks. I'm trying to keep the rotational inertia to a minimum, so there's as little weight as possible out in the wings. So all of the tanks, the fuel tank is in the center of the fuselage, actually in between my legs, and the smoke tank actually goes underneath in the fuselage, underneath my leg.
Wow.
Yeah, there's no wasted space.
It doesn't sound like it. So I think that's interesting that you don't want weight out on the wings to have a moment causing a turning moment and the like. You want to be able to totally control it without any assistance from bob weights out of the end.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I occasionally fly in folks' airplanes that have tip tanks, and you can really tell the difference when you burn down the main tanks and the tip tanks are still full. You got this big bob weight out in there. You start into an easy bank, and all of a sudden you're at 30, 40, 45, 50 degrees. You go, ooh, a little bit too much. And so you get some assistance in the turning there. Not exactly fun for most folks and the like. Well, good. So you're going to be performing here this week, of course, at Sun and Fun. And then where do you go from next, Gary? What's the next place?
We've got a little time off, but we head to Battle Creek, Michigan for a great show up there. That's going to be 4th of July weekend. And then we head west. The Stearman spends most of the summer out in the high country, out in Colorado and Utah in that area. With that big motor, I can get away with flying up in the mountains.
Yeah, I'll bet. And 2 wings to produce lift. That's a good thing. So you do some air shows in the high country in Colorado or Utah?
Yeah, actually, we hold the unofficial world record for the world's highest air show. We did a few years ago over the Breckenridge ski area. We entered the box from 13,000 feet.
Entered from 13,000.
Yeah, wow. The aerobatic box was above 10,000 feet, and then we did an over-water show at 9,000 feet over the Dillon Reservoir in Dillon, Colorado.
I know what that
so
is.
we do some shows up there where normally you have your mixture way back.
Yeah. So this is the 450 horsepower Stearman engine?
It sure is, yeah.
Yeah, wow, what a thrill I'm sure it is to fly that. That's great. Well, Josh, you're representing the next generation of aviators and pilots and youth in aviation. If someone looked to you for some advice, what can I do to get into aviation? What should I pursue in aviation? Is it a worthwhile endeavor for me? What would you tell them?
So, for me personally, it's what I could say is, go out, whatever you can do, find your passion, what you're passionate about, go out and find that as your starting point. And then just set small goals of how you can move forward and find a way into aviation. There's great scholarships and programs out there at different schools, everything like that, and just set those goals and try to achieve one every day.
Very good.
Small goals.
All right, good advice from you, Josh. Thank you very much. So for those of you considering a career in aviation or something to do with aviation in your future, set your goals, set multiple goals, maybe stair steps, as Josh indicated, working your way up, or in the case of an aerobatic pilot, working your way down to lower and lower levels as you get experience and get approved by the FAA. Well, that's great. It's been wonderful to speak with you, Gary, and with you, Josh, and get your perspective on as an air show performer, flying a Stearman. And what was the airplane you're flying, Josh?
Giles 200.
Giles 200. Is that a fairly new one? I'm not familiar with it.
It was developed in the late 80s, early 90s, once the composites started coming out.
I see.
A little more affordable and more prevalent.
Okay, and well balanced with everything
very.
in the center of the fuselage. Well, that's great. That's great. Well, our time is up, and we're broadcasting live and in the clear from the 45th Annual Sun and Fun International Fly-In and Expo. Our guests this last few minutes have been Gary and Josh Rower, and they're performing today and then again tomorrow night in the air show. I'm sure you'll be able to see them and look forward to seeing your performance. Safe flying. Gary, it's good to have you. Josh, best of everything to you in your future career. I'm Ron Timmermans, one of the hosts for the Florida Aviation Network. We're broadcasting from Sun and Fun, and I hope you'll join us again for another of our interesting interviews with the next performers. Thank you very much.